Hello, hello, everyone, and welcome to Inspiring Hope. It's been a little while. This is a show that shines the light on those who are making a difference in our world. I'm Lois Hermann, and today I'm joined by a very special guest who is an educationalist, a children's life skill learning facilitator, special needs advisor, an online parent teacher coach, and content provider for children, youth, and teens. With a passion for frequency-based education, Judy Julin was taken aback by the stories and the emotional impact of the Spirits of Amoskeag, the wounded heroes of the Manchester Mills. Their book was published 10 years ago, and we would like to shine the light on these young heroes today. So Judy, welcome. Thank you for being here to discuss, to share, to talk about these little guys, these amazing young souls. So welcome.
Thank you, Lois. Thank you for that lovely introduction to your Inspiring Hope. It's so great to be here, and I love talking with you about a myriad of subjects.
Yeah.
This particular subject, though, is just so near and dear to my heart. I was shocked, taken aback, delighted, feeling such remorse, such honor and gratitude for you for not giving up. And it drew me in from the beginning, and then the pictures in the book. I read it so quickly. I didn't want it to end, and yet it needed to end, at least this portion of it, because you told the story. And please, if you wouldn't mind, I mean, I really loved what was, said in the book about this being a well-documented, dynamic, historical adventure. I mean, that says it all. Can you give me a little bit from your perspective, and then let's talk about how our two lives intertwined while you were writing this book when I was in New Hampshire.
Isn't that interesting? Yes. So the book, actually, the origins of the book started in 2003. So over 20 years ago, I was actually technically hired by a group of, by employees at an assisted living facility to investigate the mischievous stuff that was going on at this assisted living facility outside of Manchester, New Hampshire. And I actually went in, and there was a person there who went into trance. I'm a hypnotist, a metaphysical-based hypnotist. So she goes into trance, and we start communicating with spirits, and they're telling their stories. And they were tragic, sad stories. And the lead spirit, who was probably around 30, an older man by their standards, said, "I will take the others into the light if you promise to tell the public about our story." And I did, and I recorded. Back then, I was recording everything via audio, and now, of course, we do everything video, but I made it audio recordings, and I take pretty thorough notes. So these spirits were trying to get the people's attention at this assisted living facility, and they had caused a lot of accidents to get people's attention because they were excavating near the facility to expand it, and they wanted their bodies found. So this was, again, back in 2003. We started the research after we helped over 300 spirits into the light. We started researching, and the woman who hired me left the facility and took another job. And so I just let everything go fallow. It was my fault. Life got in the way, and I just got off on other adventures. Well, fast forward from that point to 2015. I'm now back in doing hypnosis again, because it's kind of come and gone through my life. Back then in 2003, I was doing it on the side. I started doing it full time, and I met this gentleman named Peter at a business networking event. And he said, "I really need your help." When he came to see me, he said, "I cannot afford to pay your full rate, but I'm told I'm supposed to help you write a book." He was very psychically tapped in. And so I said, sure, because oh my gosh, Judy, you experienced some of the journeys that I do with my team. I have so many books that are in my head that need to be documented and written. So I'm like, sure, come on, Peter. So I did several sessions with Peter. He gets a job, vice president of sales. He's doing fabulous. I fell and broke my wrist. And in my meditation for healing, I hear this young voice say, what about our story? You promised. And I went, oh my gosh, I did. So when I saw Peter the next time, I said, Peter, we need to investigate what story it is that we're supposed to tell. I didn't tell him anything about the spirits. He went in totally cold, goes into a trance state, altered state in hypnosis. You can go anywhere in your mind in hypnosis. The mind is amazing. I work in the metaphysical world in the super conscious where you can tap in to past events, you can visualize future, whatever. But he goes in and all of a sudden he's in the middle of the mills and with all the clanging and banging and the din, the sound, the smells, the hard to breathe air, and he's getting information. Well, we continued on and did several sessions and ended up with the fodder, the material for the Spirits of Amoskeag. Originally, we were going to call it the Wounded Children of the Manchester Mills, but indeed, instead of it just being children that came through, what happened was the men who had to kill the children came through with their guilt. The woman, the governess or the facilitator of an orphanage came through, and her passion for what happened to my boys. And the wife of one of the superintendents came through. So what we discovered was this atrocity that was called the Great Unspeakable affected all of society, not just the children. So we ended up calling it the Wounded Heroes of the Manchester Mills. So it's a true story. We ended up finding where potential bodies could be found. We started going down the path of wanting to prove what we experienced in this unseen world. And ultimately, we proved by way of tracking who owned the land. Archangel Michael came through and said, prove who owned the land. So we did that. We did our due diligence in twofold. Peter was investigating at the town halls of the day. He took the dates from present, tracked back to when the land was sold. And then I hired, and we discovered at that point who owned the land. But I thought, I don't want us to be the only ones saying this. So I hired a legal firm, a title company to search, and they started with the original deeds and came forward, and we met in the middle. So the land that this happened on was owned by Amoskeag Manufacturing Company, this big manufacturing mill yard. So it just, as much as I wanted to prove it, Archangel Michael said, you have done your job to publish it. It's now time to move on. But we want to prove that this happened so badly. Anyway, that's the story in a nutshell. And yet each of the children, each of their stories is so poignant in the book.
And it comes through the photography that you have in this book, the true accounts of your sessions with Peter. Lois, it took me, and perhaps it's because of, I'm involved with frequency-based education, frequencies, and everything that has to do with particularly the frequency of the children. And this book spoke to me. Not only was it, something that you wrote, but I loved what they said, that it was the stories of the children, their families, and the people of privilege who benefited from their labor are repeated today in the world's child slave market.
Absolutely.
So not only is this powerful then, it's powerful now, and it captivated my entire being because of the frequencies involved, and that I was in New Hampshire during that coldest winter when you were finishing up your book. And I read that, oh my goodness, she's finishing it up. It's the coldest winter ever. I'm in New Hampshire. I was in a haunted house. And as we went into our session together with your team, found out that there were, in fact, children in the where I was living and working that were abused, and their spirits were there. So when you begin to travel courageously as you did down this path of investigating, there's so many things that come into play. What I feel so in honor of is your courage and your word, because that is so, again, that's another thing that's so important in our world today, is the courage to speak your mind, and the courage to um, keep your word with these children, with these spirits. And it's so fascinating. And I really believe that it needs to reach a larger audience. I know a lot of people have already read it. It impacted me so that it's almost my mission now for you and the children and the families to bring this to a wider audience. It really is so fascinating. So thank you again for having the courage and the consistent that you would keep your word.
Well, when I give my word, I'm going to follow through, and they know that about me. And it was interesting to when I realized that I had dropped the ball for them, and decided to pick the ball back up and really move forward. What was very interesting is I believe they tripped me in my garden and helped me to slip and fall on my wrist to get my attention, just like they were doing in the assisted living facility to get people's attention. Because back then there were 10 deaths in a 2-year period of the employees' family members. Statistically, that's insane. The numbers are insane. And again, they wanted their story told. Because here was the sad part. The reason they were so passionate about it is they considered themselves company men. These young boys were used to crawl into the machines, to repair, to oil, whatever, to take care of these huge hydro-powered machines there were no on-off switches. They were just huge, big machines. And because they were small, they could get in while they were moving. And the rule was, is if one of them was injured, they were considered expendable. So they were taken in the basement, euthanized, put in barrels, taken out in the middle of the night and dumped, and a carcass put over their body so that no one would question. And their mothers would be told they ran away. That's why they were so angry, is that they weren't celebrated for the work they did. Their mother ended up being publicly shamed for having a runaway. She's mourning the death of her child, the loss of her child. She's out his income because he was providing some income, and she's publicly humiliated. So that's why they were angry, and that's why they were causing the disturbance with the family members of the people at the assisted living facility. See what this feels like. You hurt my mother. So they were really passionate about that. It was heartbreaking, their stories, and yet doing the investigative work that we do, asking the questions, what happened to you? Tell us more. And it was my heart just even rereading through some of it. It's horrible what people have done to children over the years in the name of progress. And this wasn't just in Manchester Mills. This was practiced throughout the industry at the time. This was the mid 1800s. 1880s is the date that came to us in these sessions. But you mentioned the pictures. The pictures themselves have their own fascinating story. So I started investigating to write the book. I'd never written a book. I am not an avid reader. I read technical manuals because of my technical medical background, or I read spiritual, metaphysical, how-to kind of mystical books. I'm not a novel reader, so I had no idea where to start with this. But I started going online, and I found pictures of the children from Amoskeag Mills. And I thought, wow. So I purchased a handful of pictures to include in the book. And then I discovered that there were hundreds of pictures, hundreds. And the pictures, most of them came from a gentleman by the name of Lois Hermann. And this gentleman was one of a group of teachers who were very upset over the fact that the children were not going to school. They were going to work in these mills or the coal mines or the cranberry bogs or the fish hatcheries. The children were going to make a living instead of going into the schools. So he posed as a photographer. And so they hatched this plan to go into these different places where they were using child labor. And he would take a picture under the auspices of taking a picture of the big equipment. Oh, small child, I want to see how big this machine is. Will you stand right here? And he would take their picture in front of the big equipment. And of course, children, the minute that somebody pays attention to them, oh, what's your name? How old are you? How long have you worked here? So he got all kinds of information from these young children. And then they did this over a period of a couple of years. He went around and took pictures all over. And then they did an expose. And they're the ones that put the spotlight on child labor. And that's ultimately what stopped the mills. Because at the time, if you look at some of the pictures in here, 40% of the staff were children. A large percentage were women. The men were more the supervisors, or they were doing the heavy lifting, but it was mostly women and children because they were more easily controlled and they cost less. So they were less expensive. So once they did away with child labor, they couldn't afford to continue production.
Are you saying to me that these photographs and their expose was what really led to the demise, at least the beginning of the end of child labor?
Absolutely. That was their intent. That was the intent of this group of teachers, is to expose the child labor and that's what led to the beginning of the child labor laws.
That's so fantastic. These photographs, it's as though he was divine in his photographic eye. Because for me, I love photography. To look into the eyes of these children, it tells the story. And then with your, now that we are becoming more aware of the quantum reality within which we live, and frequencies and energies are that much more knowable and apparent for those that take the time to see. It's a perfect time for this to come to light, albeit a little long because this has been going on, but it still goes on in our world today.
Yes.
And that's why I think your book is even more so relevant and important for people to understand. And I, of course, yes, your book. However, I also want to touch on the fact that this book is about the spirits, about energy work. Yet now you continue with your work with energy and clearing, and how important it is to make sure that you protect yourselves, because there are spirits amongst us of all varying degrees of density, as we learned from the consciousness chart from Dr. Hawkins. So your work is so full and rich of everything that's in that book. And then you bring it into to today's world in the quantum reality that's becoming more and more people are aware of it, that we can work with it and we can benefit from it. And yet we need to protect ourselves and become empowered within ourselves to learn how to work with the spirits.
Absolutely. And at the time that I did this, again, starting in 2003, I had been used to working in the spiritual realm to protect myself and my children from some nasty attack that we had been under. So I learned and I knew how to protect ourselves. And I was working with the shadow side for many years. And of course, working with the angelic side to combat the shadow side, shall I say. I didn't realize, however, at the time, the broader implications of this until the most recent years, and how the child trafficking and the child abuse, who knows what all else happened, because the first session that we did where we rescued over 300 spirits, Peter and I continued even after the book was published. We were on a mission. How many other spirits are there? And we probably rescued an additional 300 spirits of children. Now, how could there be that many children that died in the mills? This was over a period of 100 years. granted. But we also uncovered the things like the issues with abortion back then, and the fact that when we started really doing feet on the street investigation, and at the time in Manchester, New Hampshire, I can't recall the exact population, but there were 8 orphanages full to capacity at the time. And we uncovered some pretty significant abortion issues that happened that were in public, in the newspaper reported about. One case in particular that involved Oliver Wendell Holmes. So it was really interesting, all of the stuff that was happening at the time. And when you take that and you overlay it with what we're now learning about the child exploitation, I just wonder how much deeper this goes and how much broader this goes. This is just
Yes.
one snapshot, really, of a much bigger issue.
Well, thank you for shining the light on it. And I really think the archetypes that you reveal in this book, the elites, those that are afraid to speak, the parents, the workers, it has continued this story since probably before the 1800s up until today. And
Absolutely.
so the fact that your book is now coming back into the spotlight,
Mhm.
and deservedly so, that it's showing that this is continued and how important it is to speak up, how important it is to protect yourself, and how important it is to follow your inner guidance, which you did, and to also be when you give yourself, when you say you're going to do something, that you keep your word. So
Absolutely.
everything that you talk about in this book and how the book displays is relevant today. It's totally relevant. So that's why it spoke to me so deeply. So
Thank you.
thank you again for writing it.
I do want to share a really positive anecdote of the book. Um, it was a year into it, and Judy, you've taken some of my trainings, and I come from a corporate training background. I like my PowerPoint slides. It keeps me on track. I can deliver a lot of information really quickly. So I was giving a year after the book was published, I was giving a very PowerPoint presentation to a group of amazing psychics. There are some people who have incredible gifts. So I was giving a presentation to them on the spirits of Amoskeag. And at the end of the presentation, this one brilliant psychic walked up to me and said, "Is it your birthday?" I said, "No." And she said, "Well, the whole time you were speaking, there was a young boy, a spirit, standing there with a cupcake and a single lit candle wanting to give it to you." And I kept saying, "Not right now, she's talking." And I mean, even when I say this now, I get God bumps. That day, this was Memorial Day weekend, a year after the book was published. The very first copy of their book was put in my hands on Memorial Day weekend a year before, and they had 100% remembered and were celebrating and thanking me for following up to tell their story. And there in the light, we had a priest say a prayer for them, and we have continued to help them and their mothers, others that mourn their loss, to elevate into the light. And the other, so that was a really positive follow-up story to their gratitude for us sharing their story.
Have you ever, Lois, been approached in the recent past of any ancestors or anybody that might have been involved in back then, that might have been able to say or know something? Has anyone of that kind come to you because of the book?
Had an awful lot of people come to me with their own stories. There are so many stories of people who have worked in the mills and who had their mother worked in the mills with stories. So especially when the book was newly published, there were a lot of people who came forward with amazing stories of courage and determination. They worked long, hard hours in the mills. The Manchester Museum, Millyard Museum, has done a beautiful job of outlining the scope of what the people went through. I mean, work started at 6 and it ended at 6 with had a 30-minute lunch break. They worked long, hard hours. So, and it was 6 days a week. But these people worked long and hard, and the children were right there in the workforce with them. So it was a hard time in their life. And of course, you can only imagine that during times of famine, the farmers would send their teenagers to the mills to earn money. You've got teenagers unsupervised, therefore, and a little extra money in their pockets, and hence you've got children. This is where the orphanages were full to capacity, but here's this unwed young girl who's still working in the mills, but she can't keep a child, so the child is placed in the orphanage. So the mother is still around, even though the child is growing up in the orphanage. So it was an interest, and this is all documented. You can find all of that out. What we were looking for was to prove the stories of the children, and that was never fully proven. The governess, or I'm not sure what she would be called, but Marie is her name. She was so passionate about proving, what happened to my boys. She had kept documented records with her boys' names and their ages and when they went missing. And she described this box that has information about them. And I went to Catholic Charities. I went to the current school that is on the site now. They talked about St. Marie's Parish. There's a St. Marie's Parish. Peter and I, neither one of us were originally from this area, so we didn't know a lot of this. We were just going based on what the spirits were saying. And then afterwards, we would go to Discover and go, holy cow, that was real. That was real. So we came into this with a naivety without any personal bias into the stories. And in the process, we had to prove what we were discovering in the unseen. And in many ways, we did. We never found the box. We're hoping someday someone will find this random box that has ancient notations from Marie about her boys. She was so proud of her boys, and they could not have run away. She was so adamant and such the defender of them. They would have never run away. They were proud of the work they were doing. And when you look at the pictures of these young boys, that you can go to the Manchester Milliard Museum, or you can look at the pictures, many of the pictures that are here, or just look up Lois Hines, and there's dozens of pictures that he has. They're quite proud of the work they were doing. They were contributing. They felt, and to be removed if they were injured is not was not what their intent was. Not did not speak well for them. But you can only imagine, they start off maybe 10 and they're small and they grow. Boys grow quickly. Now you've got a 17-year-old who's long and lanky, still trying to squeeze into that small space. Doesn't work that way. It's not the same fit. So it was a very poignant story to write and still talk about. And the other sad piece is, when I first, and you'll read about it in the book, I had no idea how to write a book, but I was very involved with a business networking group. And there were people they're like, well, I can help you with this. I can help you with that. So I had all these people readily accessible that helped me to produce 200 books. And that was all. My commitment was just to write the 200 books. Well, they sold like hotcakes. So I ended up hiring a publisher who helped me to add even more pictures and redesigned the book just a little bit, and then had me purchase 1,000 copies. So I did, and they were housed at a warehouse. And in 2019, the same weekend as the Notre Dame fire, 750 of those books burned in a warehouse fire. They were uninsured. She said, oh, they're fine. They'll never happen. That's what happened. And I was devastated. And in my meditation, my mournful meditation, the spirits came through again, because often they would stop in when Peter and I would be doing session work. They would stop in and say, hey, thanks, or guess what? And they were just like passing through saying hi. It was fabulous. But this group of spirits, the boys from the mills, came in and said, thank you for the work you've done for us. You have a bigger calling now. You've got to focus on the Chronicles. We were in the middle of starting the Chronicles of Hope series. And they said, you've done us what we asked for. What's happened, though, is now that the Chronicles is produced and out, I feel like it's time to kind of go back 10 years later it's time to go back and shine the light on these children, because now we have more of an awareness of the exploitation of children that was evident by their stories. And we could probably get even more. We have even more stories of children's exploitations of spirits around the world that have been used and abused in so many ways.
In so many ways. And it's the same playbook where the elite have cover-ups and dominion over the children, and the parents are simply either unaware or afraid to speak up.
Afraid
So
to...
your book is really a clarion call for those that want to speak their truth
Mhm.
and keep their word.
Mhm.
I guess my question for you also is, as you deal with the energies of manifestation and intention setting, now that you're revisiting the book, and it's my mission now to really take this to an audience, perhaps in a movie, perhaps in a miniseries. And there's also an opportunity perhaps to have the photographs on display, and people can go and learn about it with video from you, with excerpts from the book.
Right.
So I guess I want to ask you, Lois, what would be your fondest wish, at least in this next iteration of the Spirits book, how you would see it best showcased or brought to light?
I would like to see it brought to light as truthful stories. I was advised, oh, put it out as a fantasy. And I can't do that because these were spirits that came to me. I can't say that theirs was a fantasy story. These spirits are real. And currently, the Manchester Millyard Museum, I've taken the book there. They will not sanction it because it's not documented fact. So part of me wants to find the box, wants to prove that this is real. And yet Archangel Michael, even as he's come through, has said, you've done your job. My job, though, is to celebrate all of the children and their mothers, because that's who this book is dedicated to. It's dedicated to, let me just read this. This book is dedicated to the women who have lost their children and the children who have lost their lives. Because the level of remorse and sadness when a woman's child goes missing, I don't think that there's anything that parallels that. So there's so much sadness over the tragic loss of life and limb and abilities of our children. And even in this day and age, with the rising levels of autism, the rising levels of childhood illness based on the different unknowns that are out there that some people have proof about. But the mothers that are struggling, I know several mothers who have severely autistic children, and it's really a huge hardship on their life, and yet they are talk about the ultimate in dedication to their children. So celebrating that our children need to be raised more in the Native American, nature-oriented, in touch with Mother Gaia and the animals and growing things. And we just need to shift the way that we teach our children and embrace our children so that they can bring that beautiful higher vibrational energy into everything we do. So it's about celebrating our children and the courage that they had over the years.
And as authoress of this incredible book, this incredible, true, documented historical book, you're really shining a light on the importance of the relationship between mother and a child, the relationship of education and how important that is in our world, the importance and the relevance of the unseen world. So all these things that you're bringing, that you brought for this book, are now completely relevant in today's world with our new administration and our HHS secretary, Robert F. Kennedy Jr. talking about healthy foods and looking into the connections between vaccines and autism. So this book is coming around again, and the very principles that you were so courageous to highlight are coming around again with a little bit of a different front-facing look to them, but nonetheless, they're very, very much the same. So I'm excited to watch what is the next iteration of this book, because I know that it's not completed yet. I'm looking forward to reading your Chronicles books, because
Yeah.
it's as you say, it's in the same realm.
Mhm.
Would you say that?
It is. It's in the spiritual realm. It's a metaphysical book with amazing messages that came through. I want to add one other comment about what you're talking about that has the bridge of relevance from then to now, is this great unspeakable, that people are afraid to speak their truth. The censorship right now is so real. The censorship back then, they were not allowed to say what they saw. People were afraid to say what they saw. So everybody had to look the other way. Yeah, we probably know, but we're not allowed because we'll lose our jobs, we'll lose whatever. So it's the same. Unfortunately, we think we're in a free society. It's very difficult to speak truth in this day and age and have people believe you, because when you try and speak truth, there are people that will attempt to discredit. And that's what they did back then. It's amazing to me that we have not graduated. We have yet to graduate into a place of celebrating truth. And that's truly the message that came through with the Chronicles, is you must speak truth. You must celebrate truth, honesty, and integrity. Huge message in the Chronicles. That's a whole nother story. We'll have to, once you read the Chronicles, we'll have to get it on and talk about that, Judy, because that's been
It's
where my life has been for the past 8 years.
Yeah, it's interesting that you truly embody all those principles that you speak of, that the Spirits book stands for, and now the Chronicles book stands for. So in today's society, and thank goodness, we're moving more into disclosure. We're moving more into the truth shining. And this is something that is really deeply embedded within the spirit world and the frequency world. And that is when you, Lois, come to the world with such light, sometimes people aren't able to accept it because it lets them see perhaps their own darkness that they have, that is unhealed from their childhood. So you're doing so many different levels of thing. You're shining a light on truth. You are embodying truth and light, and you're also offering almost an unspoken invitation for people to start to level up in their own consciousness.
And it is a challenging and sometimes a lonely path. I've lost many friends along the way who were close and then moved away for whatever reason. Some of the truth that is illuminated is bothersome, and they have to move away. And I've learned that that's because people come and they go. It's part of the vibrational energy, and that is just part of nature. What we have to do is endeavor to stay on our highest so that we can still be truth. And if people are not going to believe our truth, then they're not ready to hear it yet. Someday they may well be ready. But speaking the truth now, there are people who are truthers who are still not ready to hear the truth. They have they're on their own path, and someday they'll get there, but not everybody is ready. And there's also infiltration of I just call it the shadow, has permeated a lot of these beautiful light workers, people who are of pure heart, but they get taken in by some of this shadow side. And it's heartbreaking to see. And yet what we have to do is learn ways to keep our energy up and strong and positive, because if we jump in the water with the drowning, we drown. We have to learn to say, that person's drowning. We can stand on solid ground, send them a lifeline. If they choose to take it, that is on them. We can send them love, light, and opportunity all they want, but we cannot force anything on anyone else. We cannot jump in lest we go down with them. So this is another huge thing that I have learned and that I teach, is the power of protection and the power of holding our own vibrational frequency at a solid, steady uphill point. Because things happen in life, and what we want to do is not have it go this. It needs to be a more gentle sine wave when we have, an animal that gets sick, or something happens, or, get a flat tire. There are things that interrupt that beautiful, peaceful energy. And yet we train ourselves, we can quickly rise above whatever hardship comes our way.
And how great to know you now. I first met you through our podcasts with Gina Freistack and Doug White.
Yeah.
And then I got to know your wonderful books, and I've read the first of many, and I can't wait. And then I had a wonderful opportunity to actually experience your classes and your sessions where you teach tools and you teach mindset. And so you have a true gift that is multifaceted, as you are. And it's a real healing balm for what our world today needs, because we are waking up, because the frequency are rising. People need not only truth and information and something that they can believe in, but they also need the tools and the consistency. And thank you for bringing that together as well. Your NLP Essentials class is amazing. I know I've been able to benefit from your clearing with your team that you work with. And so
what did you think of that? Because the clearing, working with a team, is very unique. I have been doing hypnosis clearing work for, as I said, 30 years. But over the past, since the COVID crazies, I've developed the process of working with a team. It's been a game changer, because we started getting information about what we needed to do to clear the energy that we're seeing, this orange muck in people's energy. So we started getting information, and we were able to keep ourselves clear. So therefore we could then work as a team to help clear other people. And it has evolved into a complete business model shift, to where the first session that we do with someone is done as a team. Because when somebody is so bogged down by external energy, their vibrational frequency tanks. So we talk about the power versus force, the scale of consciousness, the vibrational consciousness. Well, if somebody's down there at that low level, fear, guilt, blame, shame, they can't reach up to connect with the divine. So my team are doing the work to keep their vibe high, so they go in and they can see what the client can't see yet. The goal is to get the client cleared of the muck, be it spirits, entities, demons, gunk from our environment. We clear all of that so that the person can connect with their divine source, and then they can step into their power and fulfill their mission. So what we do is a very unique way. We have a very unique way. It's very powerful, and we all feel that we're on a divine mission.
Well, it's completely apparent when I am in your midst, in your team's midst. And another aspect of what you do, just to round it all out, are very practical. Of course, the energies behind, which is where I spend most of my time in frequency-based education, but also it's your wording. How that we can use with our words, and how you carefully choose your words of empowerment, because for so long we as a humanity have been asleep to the words that have been given to us in our indoctrination led schools. So that you're also working on that level, a very practical level of people being aware of their words and their thoughts, and you also invite them to keep their frequency as high and as refined as possible.
Absolutely. I just came up with the acronym MEPS the other day. We have to have balance on all 4 levels: mental, emotional, physical, and spiritual. The MEPS. We've got to keep our MEPS. A lot of people work a lot on the physical. Go to the doctor, you're getting all this stuff, and yes, you're drinking your pine needle tea. Yet if you're still watching movies that are harmful and harsh and bloody and gory, and that's going to lower your vibrational energy. If your mind is ruminating over the woulda, shoulda, couldas, that's going to lower your vibrational energy. So we have to work on the MEPS, all 4 levels, to clear, detox, to boost, protect, and empower on all 4 levels in order to have the whole being healthy, wealthy, and happy.
And as I interact with you through the lens of the education system in our world, for young through high school, exactly what you talk about, the MEPS. This is, I believe, vital in our education system. And I so look forward to having you interject that Lois Hermann joie de vivre, and also practical tools, and also energetic protocols. You kind of have the toolbox of everything. So I'm looking forward to incorporating what you do into the field of education, because, Lois, our world is ready for it now.
It is. And the teachers, God bless the teachers that are so determined to celebrate children. And so many adults say that if it weren't for their teacher, they would have never moved beyond. At the same time, if it weren't for the teacher, I wouldn't have this fear or phobia. So the teachers need to be given these tools, these simple, easy to use tools, in order to support our children, as do our parents. And there's just so many different ways that we can use these tools that are available to us to shift that frequency, to hold the high vibe. It's so needed right now. So needed.
And I'd love to even expand that to caregivers,
Okay.
babysitters, nieces and nephews, well-meaning grandparents, all of these, and our professional providers in
Absolutely.
the fields of psychiatry and psychology and child development. These are all changing now, yet everything that your toolbox, if you will, this Lois Hermann kit is needed on so many levels. And I'm going to do all that I can to bring your wonderful, wonderful wisdom and practical tools to a larger audience.
Thank you so much, Judy, for believing in this, for recognizing it, and for being a champion to celebrate it. I so appreciate you and your gifts, and look forward to seeing where this is going to take us, because
Yes.
there are so many people have put forth efforts in the past, and we need to celebrate them. Lois Herm's, what he did, just Hines. I get my Lois Herms from the Truth Tour and Lois Hines a little confused, but definitely.
Maybe not.
It is very interesting, the overlap, isn't it? Yeah.
Yes, yes. And I again, it's time now. I feel there's no mistakes that you and I have met. There's no mistakes that I'm involved in what I'm doing and will continue to do on even a larger scale now, that I see the importance of what you've done, and also bringing in the various aspects of what you've done, because it's not just your teaching, it's through your books, it's through your tools, it's through your sessions with your team. I don't know of any kind of psychic, spiritual healing team that works with people. I think it's a very unique concept. Yeah, I love it. And I think well, I got to experience it. It was very, very powerful. I had no idea what to expect. I know some of them. And it's almost as though you were like a well-oiled machine, that there were some people that were doing something, and then they would sometimes cross-reference. You were there as the kind of den mother to make sure that everybody was playing nice together, whether they were spirits or not. And it was very, very powerful. And I'm so glad I had the opportunity to experience it, because now I can talk about it. And I also can see different ways where we can integrate aspects of that into the education process for our future leaders.
Absolutely. Yes. Thank you. Thank you so much, Judy. I appreciate you being my friend on this journey. We've got our work cut out for us. And what's also fascinating, the serendipitousness of the timing, is that I just closed down the Spirits of Amoskeag website. It's been up since 2015. And when we published the book, we created the website. And I also had this Chronicles of Hope website. Well, it was untenable to try and maintain 3 websites. So I'm melding them all into one website, and then getting ready to transition to a newer, fresher, more current website. But in the process, I'm resurrecting these old documents and things and going, wow, I haven't seen that. It's like when you're going through a closet of memories, of photos and letters and stuff, and remembering And so it's perfect. The timing is fabulous in that here I am creating a new place for the spirits on our Lois Hermann Associates website and resurrecting all of this old stuff that's been sleeping a little bit for 10 years, but by golly, it's time to bring them to the forefront now. The
Absolutely. And
spotlight is
with
on the
fresh
children.
eyes. Yeah, because the children are so close to my heart, and my world's work, my world's service is having to do and in service of our children and our youth.
Yeah.
I can see what you're doing through fresh eyes,
Mm-hmm.
and see how that I can bring it into my world of the education process, and also the public world, because I love um, public arenas. And with the World's Fair coming up, with everything that's coming up with new interactive immersive museum experiences, I can see how your work, whether it was through the Spirits book, or whether it's through Chronicles, or your work with NLP, or your new and improved website, there's aspects of this that could be brought into everything that we're doing in the educative and public spaces in our world. So I'm
That's
very, very excited.
wonderful. Thank you so much for honoring me with this lovely discussion and for honoring the spirits. I'm feeling them around. They're very happy that we're talking about them. So thank you so much.
I just got chills too. So thank you, Lois. It's always a pleasure.
Absolutely. I like to always end with, until next time, look up, stay positive, and be the light in someone's day. God bless.